Hello to my Yankton family from Low Gables in Maine, and to all the alumni of the Lyons family farm. This is Bob Lyons, Pat's youngest brother, remembering my oldest brother. We were 7 in all, 6 brothers: Pat, Frank, Jean, Jack, Tom, me, and my twin sister Betty, or Susan, all growing up on the Lyons family farm from the 1930s to the 1950s. Someone once asked me which one of my 5 brothers I preferred. I replied, when I am with one, I prefer the others. Over the years, Pat and I have spent hundreds of hours chatting away on the telephone. I would get the weather report, the assessment of too much rain or too little, and probably there would be a colorful remark about the governor or one of South Dakota's other elected officials. And if I had had a letter recently published in the Yankton P&D or the Argus Leader, Pat would probably register his approval for the point of view. When brothers agree, there is no fortress so strong as their common life shared. It would be too much to say that Pat was a rebellious teenager, but from the stories I've heard from older brothers, it is fair to say that he set a lively pace for the rest of us 5 brothers to follow in the passage to adulthood. If Pat was not among the best of storytellers, there were great stories told about him. I learned early on that when you deal with your brothers, be pleasant, but get a witness. This lamp was a gift to Nona and me from Pat and Pearl many years ago. A reminder of those many times on the farm when the REA would black out. And Mother would say, get the lamps. We had about a dozen of them on the farm. Pat lived most of his life on the farm, which my parents, Bill and Mary Lyons, had bought in 1930, when Pat was about 2 years old. They raised their 7 children there, as Pat and Pearl raised their 6 daughters there. When my mother, Mary, died in 1991, I learned of her death by a taped telephone message from my brother Jack. And the message said, "Mother's up on the roof and we can't get her down." Jack remembered a story I had told at the August family reunion. My mother told us then, "You are not as young as you used to be, and you're not as old as you're going to get, so watch it." Mother died 2 months later at age 93. So now, before the memorable bottoms out into the irretrievable, I would like to tell that story again in honor of Pat, who always enjoyed a good yarn, as indeed he could give one in return. This story is about 2 Down East farmer bachelors, Emil and Jason Sprague, who lived with their mother Arlene on the family farm in Arundel, Maine, the next town over from our home in Kennebunk. Emil decided that they needed a little more income to get through the winter, so he got a job selling encyclopedias. Emil spent almost all of his time on the road, as the company gave him the territory of the entire state of Maine. The first day on the job, Emil drove all the way north to Machias. And like a good brother and a son, after he had checked into the no-tell motel, he called home to check up on things. His brother, Jason, answered the phone. "Oh, hi, Emil. How are things up in Machias?" Emil replied, "Fine. So how are things down there in Arundel?" His brother said, "Oh, they're okay, I guess, but by the way, your cat Freckles just died." And you know, that stopped Emil in his tracks. Dead in his tracks, because he was very fond of that cat Freckles. Emil decided it was time to give his brother a little talking to, a little advice. He said, "You know, Jason, I'm going to be on the road for over a week selling these encyclopedias. And here you spring this bad news on me the very first day." Well, of course, Jason was very sad about it. And he pleaded to his brother, "Well, what was I to do?" Emil replied, "Well, Jason, you could have broken the news to me a little easier than that. For example, you could have said the first day when I called, 'Your cat is up on the roof and she won't come down.' Then tomorrow when I called from Presque Isle, you could say, 'Well, we tried to get your cat off the roof, but we dropped her on her back. And she had to go to the vet for an operation on her vertebrae.' You see, it's a little more serious, but I still have some hope. Then the following night, when I call home from Kate Smith from Fort Kent, you could say, 'Well, Emil, it was another serious operation, but the vet says there's a 50-50 chance.' A little more serious, but I still have hope that the cat might pull through. The next night, when I call from Bangor, you might say, 'Well, your cat is in a coma.' And then when I call over the weekend from Portland, you could say, 'Well, they rushed her into intensive care. They're at her bedside 20 hours a day, but they say her chances of recovery are slight.' Now you see, I've been letting myself down gradually, day after day. That's how you break bad news to someone, Jason, who's going to be gone for a week." Jason apologized to his brother and promised that he would never do it again. Emil hung up the phone and went to bed. The next morning, he got up and drove to Presque Isle. And after a day selling encyclopedias, he went back to his motel and he called home as usual for the nightly report. Jason answered the phone. Emil said, "Hi, Jason, how are things down there in Arundel?" Jason replied, "Oh, they're okay, I guess." Emil said, "Now, come on, tell me, how's Mother?" Jason blurted out to his brother, "She's up on the roof and she won't come down." It was about 15 years ago when I called the farm. Pearl answered and said Pat was up on the roof shingling, but she could call him. When Pat got to the phone, as Pearl is my witness, he rapidly said, "Bob, I was up on the roof, but I'm able to get down." Now, a good farmer knows that in the city, people work until quitting time. But on the farm, you work until the job is finished. So to Brother Pat, I say, you'll be up on the roof no more. The work is done. And when the sun rises over the barn and floods the porch with the morning rays, there will be one vacant chair at the head of the table. And we will all turn and raise our cups to you and say, "Well done, brother, well done." We'll all meet up again at the next gathering.